So you actually have to get all the way up to 40 total yields from a tile, which seems quite incredible, quite high.
Yep. Civilization 7's exploration age tasks us to do the impossible, to form tiles that are incredibly powerful, 40 yield in strength. And this is only really possible, maybe, thanks to the new changes to districts and building an empire in Civ 7. So we begin with the districts themselves. Big changes, weird changes. Firstly, a new mechanic, overbuilding.
So I am replacing the garden with a bazaar, and this is what's called overbuilding. This is something that's unique to a new age when you've played a previous one.
I have to admit, I need to adjust my own sort of mental definition of the word. I tend to go for that first one. So, overbuild, the new mechanic which is essentially replacing buildings, as the ones from previous ages will lose some of their value as you move through to a new age. Have a listen.
What happens is you do, like you said, you lose all of your adjacency bonuses on your antiquity buildings. They're still present, they're still providing you some yield. We can see in this case I'm getting 2 gold from the market, but all of the adjacencies that it had went away.
So adjacencies from most old buildings from a previous age will be lost, but we'll get something to help us out.
Specialists that you place onto the map are still there once you transition, but what specialists do is they boost the adjacencies of the buildings in that tile. All of those go away from the antiquity buildings, so we want to place buildings into tiles where we might already have specialists to try to boost those again, and that's going to matter for our science legacy path.
It will, more on that later, but the specialists will be key because they interact with adjacency in this game, and they stick around through the ages. Here, if I just freeze frame for a moment, you can see what happens when you grow. You can either grow out to a new tile, or if you don't want to expand your city, you could choose to add to an existing tile. What do you add? A specialist. This way of adding extra population, again, like we talked about in a video last week, building tall rather than wide. You can see also, by the way, the other option here. Here it is. Choosing this tile will give you a plantation, so you can improve a tile, improve a resource on a tile, or add a specialist if you choose to. Now, back to the task at hand, because finally Herefraxis also showcased another important change for districts in Civilization 7, and probably the final one to round out these first overarching changes.
In Civ 6, you got science adjacency from reefs, with Gathering Storm, you got it from geothermal vents, and then mountains, and now it's from resources. So science and production buildings both get adjacency, their respective building adjacency from resources.
So, there you have it. Quite a few changes to adjacency, that last one being that resources are key for science and production adjacencies. We're going to need our specialists, and crucially, we're going to need to overbuild, like they're doing here, selecting a new building, placing it down, potentially over top of an old one. I will probably refer to it as replacing. We see some other points of interest here too, like the building of a unique quarter, another way to stack a whole load of yield and synergy within a district by adding 2 likewise buildings. You might have also noticed an interesting tag, Ageless, alongside the many other points of interest in that shot in particular. So let's talk ageless and persistent, the kinds of things that keep their yield as you move through an age, because these districts will matter as well. Have a listen.
So there's actually 2 types of buildings that cannot be overbuilt. One of those is ageless. Ageless means that once that building has been placed, its effects continue to persist regardless or continue to matter regardless of the age. So things like the Civ unique buildings, the Parthenon and the Odeon, those are ageless. Once they're placed, we cannot build over those. So this Greek quarter that we have here, the Acropolis, is going to stay here throughout exploration, throughout modern. We will always have these buildings. We can never replace them.
And that's important because that is not flexible. You're going to need to build around that, plan around that, unlike a lot of other things which could be overbuilt. As we move through, there's more to uncover here though.
The second type is persistent, and those are on our warehouse buildings, like the granary here. Persistent is very similar to ageless in that you cannot overbuild it and its bonuses continue to matter. However, persistent buildings can continue to be built in future ages. So if we do not have a granary in a settlement, we can still make a granary in a settlement because the granary has that persistent tag.
Right, so there's Ageless tag and also persistent, and the difference is, by the sounds of things there, that persistent can be built in future ages, whereas ageless buildings cannot be built in future ages, but their benefits are ageless. However, so too, I'm guessing, are the benefits of the persistent buildings, and this is the part that just feels a little bit weird to me. It's almost like you could swap the titles, ageless and persistent, and it would still work. Like, the words kind of mean the same, you're kind of talking about the same thing. The real in-game impact of only being able to build it once and not being able to replace it, I assume that last part is also true for both of them, is still the same. And I also worry a little bit that this kind of weirdness around the nomenclature could hinder players, our experience. See here, there's sawmill, ageless, but the warehouse, the saw pit, is persistent, not ageless, yet they're both kind of the same thing. As you move through the ages, the impact is the same. I don't know, seems a little bit unusual to me, but I could be alone in that. Let me know in the comments, I'm sure you will. Let's move through then and bring this all together. How do all of these changes relate to the final part of our video? It's time to talk about the Enlightenment and that goal of getting 40 yield in a district only halfway-ish through the game. I mean, this is a big ask, traditionally at least, for previous Civ games. Though, if we take a look at some evidence, they've moved through from a previous age here and in this exact same live stream where everything else has been from, and even the AI is able to achieve some stuff inside of the science one anyway. These goals seem to be reasonably achievable, and the developers for Axis will go on to reinforce that. It's important to note that, of course, by achieving these legacy milestones, we advance the age. We also benefit ourselves in a future age, right? By unlocking these legacy points to spend on upgrades for our leader and all sorts of benefits for the Empire. Back to the Enlightenment, though. I want you to listen to what Firaxis had to say about its achievability in Civ 7.
So the Science Legacy path is all about building super powerful tiles within your cities. But this is actually pretty normal gameplay here in the Exploration Age, that you can get a few tiles in your cities up to this level.
At the end of the age.
At the end of the age, we unlock higher specialist caps as we go through the age. We have to get our adjacency buildings, so buildings from this age, put in place. We'll want to stack 2 of them in the tile, and both of them have strong adjacencies. And then each specialist we put down on top of that helps both of those buildings get better and better adjacencies. And then you'll also see in our civics tree, there are civics that temporarily boost adjacency bonuses.
Yeah.
Or certain types of buildings. And that's how you can finally get all the way up to 40 total yields.
So, it may be possible, as you have moved through from one age into the next, to actually get the 40 yield. And if anything else is to go by, if some of the stuff that they released recently as well, in that last developer diary, about this very topic, about managing an empire, we saw some fairly high yields, and you've seen some in the gameplay of this video too. So my conclusion is that while some of the terminology might be a bit weird, or as my high school Japanese teacher would say, it's not weird, it's interesting. So maybe a bit interesting. The broader system seems like it should be fairly fun to use. I like the idea of yields being supercharged, particularly as a player who prefers to play tall rather than wide. I find this fairly interesting, fairly exciting even. Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below, and thank you again for subscribing. What a record effort. We might actually hit 100k by Civ 7 day. Thank you for being here. See you next time.